Hello, Miss Jennifer. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. And how's my main man, my baby boy, Erik?
He's great. He said, I'm great today.
Oh, you're great every day. And there is no time, so there's no day, so you're eternally
Yes.
great.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I love you.
I love you.
Can't wait to our event. You guys need to come October the 19th, 20th, and 21st.
Mhm.
Jennifer Doran, Jamie Nolavincia, and of course Erik, and who knows what else. It could be
Yeah.
there could be all sorts of surprises. All right, so we are going to talk about, with y'all's permission, the Me Too, the hashtag Me Too movement. There's so much going on in that arena. This is just a huge thing that has been closeted for so long. The sexual harassment and molestation of women, and especially in the workplace, where men in power that have power over women feel like they're entitled and can get away with this stuff. But on the other hand, you have, I'm sure, some cases of women who make allegations that are not true, especially toward people that they are not controlled by, but are in a position of power, that maybe they want to extort money, etc. I mean, I don't be hating, because it happens on both sides, men and women. So, Erik, give me your take. And if you want Jillian to chime in, that's fine too.
Okay. So what he's saying is that this is it's just such a huge topic, and that there's so much to it. But he said it's really, this is the time for there to be actual change.
Good.
Because of the hashtag Me Too. This is a possibility for real change to happen. And he said, put aside all the other stuff that's going to come along with anything that's being talked about and in the public eye and gets a lot of publicity. There's going to be people with not the best motives that kind of latch onto it. He says that's just human nature. So he said, set that aside for a minute. He said, if people, and he says people really are, but if people take notice and step up and come forward and are nice to people, he said it's so hard for the people who come forward.
Yeah.
And then so often they're not treated nicely, and then it creates this fear. But if everybody could just accept that this is a culture that has existed for decades and decades, and
Probably centuries.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yes, and he says it needs to change, and there can be real change in this time that we're in right now. There can be real change with this. And he says in this sense, like the internet and the social media and all that stuff that sometimes has negative effects. He says without the social media, this would not happen. He said that's why it's taken so long to get to this point, is because it needed to be on a global platform. And social media is how it's going to happen.
That's awesome. Well, why? Oh, there goes the emergency thing. Why does it exist to begin with? Is it partly because we live in a patriarchal society, and have for, well, not all throughout human history? There have been some places where there was a matriarchal society, but for centuries we've had predominantly a patriarchal one.
Yeah, and it's he says this really is a global epidemic, is what he calls it. This is a global issue. But yes, it's because because it's a patriarchal society, and especially as it relates to the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
When a man is doing this to the female employees, it's like they've gotten away with it. They've gotten away with it for so long. And of course, understand that, yes, there are women who do this, and there are also men who are victims, but we're just speaking in general terms right now. Mm-hmm. Is what he says. And yes, when you get in the position of power, you you think you're entitled to
That's
do
too bad.
more than what you're actually allowed to do. And then he says, quite frankly, for so long they were allowed. It was allowed.
Yeah.
There
A
was
slap on
nothing
the
done
butt,
about. Yes.
But it's
Yes. There was
terrible when
nothing done.
when you increase when you augment yourself to a position of power. You should use that power for good, for making people feel better about themselves, for turning people into great leaders and great mothers and great fathers and all that stuff. It's
Yeah,
just,
but see, what he just said about that is that for these people who are in power, a lot of them feel like, oh, if I'm showing you that kind of interest, you should feel grateful.
oh,
So
because I'm famous or I'm
yes,
powerful or I'm rich, all
yes.
the above.
So is as if they're like almost he says like as if they're doing them a favor, like is how the mindset can be. It's twisted. He said it's so twisted and it's delusional. He said really a lot of these people who have done these things are just absolutely delusional to what they've actually done, and they don't realize how they've affected these people. He says because if you're the person that's having to deal with this and being subjected to this, he says, for some people, they immediately go into like a victim mode where they don't know what to do, don't know how to get out of it, need the job. He says that snowballs so quickly for people that they just don't really know how to get out of it.
Yeah, it's difficult. And then that works for the guy. So he, it continues his predation to other women.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I
Yep.
have been the victim of that sort of thing. Oh gosh, so many times. I remember I accepted, somebody wanted me to go out on a date when I was at Rice University. And anyway, after the movie and dinner, he said, well, I want to, go up to our room and let's have sex. And I go, no, what are you talking about? I said, what are you talking about? I just bought you a movie and a dinner.
Yeah. Like you owed him now.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, bam.
Ridiculous.
Bye-bye.
Ridiculous. And I personally have also been in the workplace subjected to this, and honestly, the way Erik is putting it, he says really and truly, if people were willing to admit it, he said it's definitely more have than have not.
I've been accosted by patients. I've been accosted by coworkers, a neighbor. Oh gosh, I just can go on and on. But yeah, it's not pretty. It's very, very common.
Yeah, absolutely.
And well, anyway, why do so many people know this is going on but look away? Like Meryl Streep, Jane Fonda. I mean, shame on them for admitting that they knew exactly what was going on, not saying anything, so these predators can attack other women. And frankly, Hollywood, they're supposed to be pro-women, pro-women's rights, etc. So it's just, I don't understand the hypocrisy. Why would they look away?
Okay. So what Erik keeps saying is weakness and selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that's not to say that they're bad people, that they're horrible.
No, nobody's bad people. They make bad choices.
Yes, in these situations, weakness is, fear. I'm afraid if I do this, what will happen to me? If I come forward and say this, what will happen to me? That's where kind of the selfishness comes in. I don't want to lose my career. I don't want to be dragged in front of the court system. And, it's across the board. It's why people don't get involved in crimes that they see.
Yeah.
Because people are afraid. They're, concerned about themselves, their welfare. They're not thinking about other people. And he says that's what happened here. They weren't thinking. And he said it's also, especially in particular with the Hollywood stuff, he says it became such a culture there. And he says actually it was more of an open culture in Hollywood than it is in the rest of the world. Like it
Oh,
was,
yeah.
like if you were actually in Hollywood, you really pretty much had an understanding of how it worked.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is how it's worked for years. If you want to, you pretty much have to get on board.
And the big time names and the Hollywood execs have so much power over even
Yes.
people like Jane Fonda and Meryl Streep
Yes.
and all that. So I could see they could have completely lost their
Yes.
career, not had any movie roles, TV roles, etc. So I could see still there were people that came forward, women that came forward and started this whole hashtag Me Too. So that took a lot of courage. My hat is off.
And he says, Erik says, without the hashtag Me Too, which is, it really is a wonderful thing. He says, without that, he said, it would have taken much longer for people to find their strength. But he says groups, when there's a group, there's strength in numbers, And so when this started happening and people started trickling out, well, he says they knew, the people who kind of started saying, yeah, this happened, they knew that there was dozens and dozens of them behind him. So they knew that there was going to be others that were going to say, yep, this is exactly what happened. But without the safety of numbers, he said it would have taken much longer. So the hashtag Me Too is huge for this. He said huge. And he said, he just says, really, it's really just the beginning. He says, he's like, companies, stuff is going to get rewritten on sexual harassment. He said, it's going to be like an overhaul over the next 5 years.
It's about time. Yeah. Well, should these people who admitted that they knew what was going on, but didn't, bring it out to the public to protect women that were presently being abused and harassed and those in the future, shouldn't they have consequences of some sort?
Yeah, he says, yes, there should be consequences. He said, the problem is going to be finding consequences that won't prevent others from stepping forward, because he says if the consequences are too severe, then people will just shut back down. So he says that's really tricky, because of course there should be some consequences, but if you say, okay, well, you're going to go to jail for 2 years, well, nobody else is coming forward and admitting to anything.
So, that makes sense.
That's really tough.
But it needs to be admitted immediately, and people need to document things as much as they can, recordings, video, whatever. I'll get into why in a minute, but so what do we have to learn from all this as a collective?
Well, honestly, what he's saying about this actually is a global shift in how we treat each other. So that's what there is to learn here is that empathy and sympathy. And also he said, there's this togetherness because of the people who are now not ashamed to admit something happened to them. And then there's other people that are saying, oh yeah. And he says that actually helps heal when you can finally say, you know what, this happened to me. And then other people are saying, well, this is what happened to me. This is what happened to me. And he says it cuts that in half for each person. That suffering. And so he said, this really is huge. And it's, he says it's really actually pretty exciting because it's just starting. He said it really is just starting for what's going to come, but it's just going to, because there are people who have looked at their behavior and said, I didn't realize that what I was doing was wrong. Because they were so ignorant to their position and the power that they had, and that they were putting people in a position where they felt as though they couldn't say no. And he said, so there are some people who we would consider to be the abusers, who are really horrified at their behavior.
But probably the women may not have given them feedback of like, oh no, don't do this, because if they did, they'd be afraid to lose their job. So there was maybe no communication back to tell the abuser that I don't want this.
I don't want this. And he says, especially for, if you take that out of Hollywood and take it to, people who need their job to eat and to pay their bills and to take care of their children and their families, he said, that's a really tough decision when it's, about your life and your survival. As far as like the Hollywood stuff goes, he says that's a little bit different because they've got money. There is money, so it's not like okay, if I say no to this person, I'm going to lose my job and I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent next month.
Well, it could be some of these young actors and actresses.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Or the Grit Boy, or the
Yes.
all that. Yeah,
absolutely. But I was talking about the
upper,
yes, the upper. But yeah, for the people who don't, he's like, if your manager at the department store that you work at, makes a pass at you, and you're afraid if you don't, you'll lose your job. Yeah. Well, that's an impossible position to put the person in.
Of course. All right. So the perpetrator, I mean, when they do things like that, we also have to be. Oh wait, no. One thing I also want to say that maybe I channel from Erik is that I don't think for the collective lesson here, it's only about sex. I think it's all in all about love, about loving each other, and trading fear for love, which are the opposite sides of the same coin. Is that right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. He said this is not just about sex. It's about control. It's about power. It's about love. Yeah. It's about all of this stuff. And it really is for the people who are willing to learn from this. It will help them be more empathetic towards others. Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. That's good. And the hashtag Me Too movement has really helped bring us together as a collective, at least in some part. Now, what do we do with the perpetrators? I mean, you can't be completely incompassionate. They do this for a reason. In some cases, it may be some pain or fear inside. Why would you want to lash out, out and lash onto control if there wasn't some sort of fear or some sort of negative thing involved?
Yeah. So he's saying, as far as that goes, with the perpetrators, he said it really is like, it has to be a case by case.
Yeah.
It has to be a case by case, which he says it will be anyways.
Oh yeah.
It will be a case by case anyways. But he says, no, if, anybody who abuses their power, there needs to be repercussions for anybody who abuses their power. If they get caught, there needs to be repercussions.
Absolutely. But is there also something we could do to help them?
Yes.
Because obviously they must have some sort of pain inside. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yes. No, he says those are two separate things though.
Yeah, I know.
So he says, yes, helping them. Yeah, absolutely. Whether they need psychiatric help, psychological help, whatever kind of help they may possibly need, but there still needs to be some repercussions.
Okay.
And it, he says maybe it's just that the person loses their job, or, it doesn't necessarily
it depends.
mean jail.
Yeah.
Yes. It doesn't necessarily mean jail depending on the situation and the person, but yeah, there needs to be something. And it's like companies need to step in and have their own rules of, hey, if this is what happens, if you are, caught partaking in any of this, you immediately, like a zero tolerance.
Oh yeah, zero tolerance.
Zero Absolutely. Tolerance policy. Yeah. That's what they have in schools with drugs. If
right.
like that type of a thing. He says companies will start adapting a zero tolerance.
Yeah.
Which will be helpful because people will lose their jobs.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So they might think twice about,
Yeah. Now, of course, this whole thing with Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh has gone on, and these other accusers. And I'm a little disappointed in the Democrats for knowing this in July and not caring enough about Dr. Ford to do something about it. It's like release the secret weapon when they needed it. So they're supposed to be a party that's so pro women, and yet they're using, I think, I might be wrong, Dr. Ford and saving her for a political weapon. And I'm just is there a danger of that? I mean, we're never going to be able to, we're going to only have female Supreme Court justices because every male is going to be guilty until proven innocent.
Yes. So it's funny because Erik was talking to me about this before we did this call, and he says, "Oh, we're going to end up talking about Kavanaugh." So he's like,
"We don't need to talk about who's guilty and who's not. I don't
yes.
care. I don't care about that."
Yeah, he already said that.
No, I don't even want to go there. I just want to know what this means for the future and why is it going on and what's happening.
Yes. So what he says is, yes, that the way that they handled it, as far as having the letter and not doing anything about it right away, whether it was or not, the perception is it was a tactical maneuver.
Oh, it was.
So he said, whether you believe it was or wasn't, the perception is that it was.
Yeah.
And this is tricky. This is tricky. He says they have to tread so carefully here because it's like this particular situation, it's almost like he says it's really almost like a lose-lose here with this particular situation. He says it's like a lose-lose here, and he says in reality it's not, but it's going to appear to be a lose-lose.
Yeah, but it is a shame when we start using the hashtag Me Too movement and women as a political weapons. I'm sure if the tables were turned, the other side probably would have done, hopefully not, but maybe would have done something else. I mean, something similar. So it's really scary. And I also see a lot of double standards. Like, for example, they pretty much said Kavanaugh is guilty. I don't care. I believe the woman because she's a woman. Because she got a vagina, we believe her.
Right.
Yet with Keith Ellison, the second in command of the Democratic Party, Democratic National Committee, he is in trouble because his ex-girlfriend, said he abused her, but they dismissed all, charges or whatever because they said there was no video evidence. So they needed video evidence for him. And then you have Clinton, who dismissed Juanita Roderick, and yet she's very quick to assume that Kavanaugh is. So the double standard.
Yeah, and what Erik is saying says, unfortunately, anytime there's a political aspect, he said, it doesn't matter. He said, you're not going to ever get the full story.
I know. And it's probably true of both parties, people, so don't behave.
Yep. Oh, yep, absolutely. He said, whenever there's a political aspect, you're never really going to ever get the full story of what's happening. But he says the potential, one of the potential downsides of this is because of what has happened to Dr. Ford. He says it may make some people afraid to step forward.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
That's really a shame.
He says it doesn't need to. It doesn't need to. But he says it may. It may make some people afraid. Like, it's kind of scary to be put out there like that.
I know. They were interviewing kids on campus, and they're all saying, "Oh my God, now I'm really scared because anything I say or any perception of what I do or say, it can haunt me 40 years later and destroy me, my career, my family." So, but so what does this mean for the rule of law, for the whole thing of you are innocent until proven guilty, that our founding fathers stated in the Constitution? Yeah. So in this, I mean, sorry, what do you do if it's a he says, she says thing? I mean,
he said that's tough because in this situation, he said this, it seems like it's trial, but it's not really like going to court, being presented in court, because he said, she said stuff is tough to prove. If there's no video, if there's no nothing, it is very tough to prove that.
Yeah.
And so it is, as far as that goes, he says, moving forward, especially if there's not a lot of, like, okay, like with Bill Cosby.
Oh
He
yeah.
said there was so many stories that were similar, and so it's like that. He said, even without video evidence or any of this stuff, witnesses, he said, that would probably hold up in court. That would probably do it. But he says if something is happening like that where you're going to go to court, there needs to be proof. There needs to be evidence or a history, a history of stuff. And he said that's going to be a little bit harder to change.
Yeah. And that's too bad in Dr. Ford's case. I mean, it could be that he did something, or it could be that it was somebody else and she, mistake. I don't know, it's just the wrong identity. But I feel like she's being sincere. My advice to women is, if something happens to you like this,
say
you
something
go
right away.
Immediately to the police. Get the DNA testing and things, whatever you need. Okay.
You say something right.
Make sure that friends videotape and
Erik is getting like a little bit animated here. He's like, yes, you say something right away. And he says, it doesn't matter what you were doing, how you got into the situation that you were in. He says, you have to know that it's not your fault, that, you might feel embarrassed, and yes, there might be some shame and that you feel, right or wrong, wrong or indifferent. He says, those are just the feelings that happen. And he says, you still go and you say something. And
evidence and stories and witnesses are fresh, because we also need to do this for women who could be the future victims of the predator.
And he says the hashtag Me Too, this is what it's teaching, especially the younger women, because, for those of us who have kind of gotten a little older, this is new. This is a new thing. So it's like the things that happened in our 20s, it's like, okay, maybe I see now, but for the teenagers, the young girls and boys, because he says boys this happens to men and women, girls and boys. And he says, you just say something right away, but there's so much fear. But he said this is going to help the fear lessen.
Good. That's good. So that's another good thing about the Me Too movement. Like you said, strength in numbers. All right, so let's see. Is there a danger of the accuser giving false allegations let's talk about accusers that give false allegations because they want money, power, exposure, whatever.
Yes.
How common is that? I mean,
well, so what he says is that it's a small percentage. He actually says it's a small percentage of people who come forward and say something. And honestly, he's kind of like, look at what happens to the people who step forward. I mean, this is not a fun thing to do.
No.
So this isn't something you're just going to be sitting at home thinking, what, I'm going to say that I was sexually assaulted, and because this will be fun. So he's like, most people who step forward, it's truly because something did happen.
True.
But
yes,
but there is a percentage of people who like the attention or think that there's a financial gain from it. So they do it. Because,
a lot of them don't even need to be public. They could just extort and say, I will go public with,
Yes, exactly.
I think it's a percentage. It's probably false allegations is probably pretty small.
What,
less than 5% or?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he was putting me somewhere around probably like 2 is what I was feeling.
Okay.
It's a pretty small percent, but it does happen, and people do hear about it, and so that does, for anybody who does that and stuff, it does set back this hashtag Me Too movement. It sets it back a bit.
Yeah. What should we do to help the victims? Besides not making them feel ashamed of sharing their story. Know that it takes courage.
Yeah, and so that is all good. He says, like, like if you're in a corporation, if you work for a corporation or in a company and something like this happens, and that's what he just reminded me there was something from before, whereas, maybe somebody can't have a legal action, but corporations can take over and handle the punishment, but they can also handle some of the victim stuff as well. If you are working for a corporation and you are sexually harassed by a coworker or a boss, that companies will start having support groups or counseling.
Good.
But that, he says, that's one of the things that you're going to see too.
Good. That should be it. That's awesome.
Yep.
Let's talk about women abusing men, or other women for that matter.
Sure.
How common is that?
Okay, so really what he's saying is truly the most common is men to women.
Oh yeah.
He says that really is the most common, and he says women to women, men to men, women to men, those are all kind of closer closer in percentages, he says, of that kind of thing. But it absolutely does happen. And he says it doesn't, it's the same. He said it's exactly
just treated the same.
Yep.
As far as reparations, consequences, all that.
Absolutely. He says there should be no difference. There's a victim and a perpetrator.
That's true. Now, what does this mean to white male and white male privilege? I mean, it seems like the white male is like under attack here. I mean, part of it is because they have given a lot of fodder for a lot of material for people to act on, but it's almost like they are being prejudiced against on so many levels right now.
It's weird the way he's kind of putting that. Is it's like it's sort of being made a focal point when it doesn't necessarily have to be, because he says it's all races, it's all races, it's all that are the perpetrators and the victims. But he said it's there's, well, quite frankly, there's a lot of white male figures in power.
That's
true.
So that's true.
So he says it's kind of like that, but he seems to think that this is inconsequential. Whatever,
because, defining it as the bad white male. Oh, you have too much white male. I mean, that just divides us more. We should just erase race and gender out of it, and see each person as just a human being who is either doing something good or something not so good.
Yes. Yeah. And that's kind of how he's making me feel about it. Is it's like, that's gonna just kind of wash away. It's like a focal point that's a little bit of a distraction, but because he says it's, again, take race and take all that out of it. You've got a perpetrator, you got a victim. It doesn't matter what the perpetrator looks like or what the victim looks like.
Human to human. That's it. So what's it going to take for us to be mutually respectful of each other, regardless of gender, race, religion, etc.? I mean, this is a step in the right direction, but what else is it going to take?
Knowledge and understanding. And he says, well, as a race of people, we'll never fully get there. It's a constant learning process. But this type of thing, this type of shocking thing, is how we start having a better understanding of each other. So we need stuff like this that's dramatic, that's unfortunately that's sad and that's shocking. And he says we as humans, we need that kind of stuff, because those really are the things that force change.
Too bad. I mean, too bad it takes so much. Well, I also think that we shouldn't be battling this with hatred. Battle it with love. You can't put out fire with fire. Like that, was it a Georgetown professor said that all the white senators should die miserable deaths, be castrated, and then fed to swine. I mean, seriously, that is not going to make the world a better place. That is not going to help. I mean, so I think that is disgusting. disgusting. That is
Yes.
horrible. Fight it with love. Of course, that doesn't mean these people don't have consequences, but still, fight things with love.
Yeah, and actually, so what Erik is saying about that is that that type of thing, he says that people are going to have that reaction of that type of passion and anger and hatred, and he said no, that's not an effective way to handle it, but he said you're still going to have that. But actually what he says, that's interesting. Okay, is he saying that people who have that type of passion, who say these type of things,
mm-hmm.
they actually help in a way because they keep
the conversation going.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I see that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So there's a purpose.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And maybe the thing that the public will take away is it's not good to be
that's
that way.
not effective. Yeah,
It's not good. That's evil.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's talk about what's going on in the Catholic Church, the abuse of young boys and men by the priest. What's going on there? What can be done about that?
Well, okay.
That should be part of the Me Too movement, really.
It is. Oh, absolutely. He said this fits right in to the hashtag Me Too movement. He said this is just it's like as if you take a subculture of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the hashtag Me Too movement on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
So he said yes, they do fit right in. This needs an overhaul, he said. This needs an absolute overhaul in the way it has been handled to this point. But he says that is already started. He said that is already there. There will be change there as well.
Good. I think it took, calling Pope Francis on the carpet for looking the other way in a particular instance.
Yes.
So that's good.
Well, because what he's saying is because again, back to social media and that stuff being a real plus in this situation, he said people aren't going to stand for it anymore. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is the bottom line. There, Catholic Church needs money.
Oh, and people they don't want people to fall away from, and it's probably already happening, but I don't know.
Oh, he says it absolutely is. So this is going to have to be an entire overhaul of the way that they've handled.
How awful that would take money to stimulate change instead of just a sense of right and wrong.
He says money is one of the best, if not the best motivator for people.
Shame too, because I saw this thing on TV where this Nathan something, I think he's a comedian or screenwriter. He had like 3 people that wanted to lose weight, and so he had them do something really embarrassing, and he would keep that, and they'd come back in a way. If they lost 5 pounds in a week, then he would give them back the whatever. And if he didn't, he would send it to whoever they said, like send a picture of me naked to my mother if I don't lose it, or just awful things. And it was really a great motivator.
Yes.
So
yes, absolutely. But and what Erik is saying, like in a situation like this, when you take what's going on with the Catholic Church, he said that there were people in there again who knew what was happening. That didn't have the power to sweep it under the rug and hide it, that were kind of like witnessing it and didn't know what to do. And again, that fear and that worry about myself, so I don't do anything. And that's how it was able to perpetuate for so long.
It's too bad because these are children.
Yes, it's horrible. Horrible. So he said, money is going to ultimately be a big motivator here. And of course, right from wrong should be enough.
Yeah. But anyway, nobody wants to be an altar boy anymore. All right, last question. How can we spread this to other parts of the world, like the Middle East? They have quite the dichotomy between men and women, and I'm sure there's a great deal of, in other parts of the world, even more sexual abuse than we have here.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's like, what he's saying is that it's already spread to other countries. This hashtag Me Too. He said it's
Good.
kind of has some global reach at this point. But yes, as far as the countries who really have issues, he said that's just going to take longer.
Okay.
It's just going to take more time. But he says eventually it will seep through globally.
Okay. How long will it take to where things are much better in the United States?
He says with regards to all of this, there is huge changes over the next 5 years.
Oh,
Huge
good.
changes. But
Okay.
see, he said don't let the 5 years scare anybody, because there will be changes along the way. But
Oh,
if we
yeah, of
took a
course.
snapshot of right now and a snapshot of 5 years from now, he said there's going to be so many more programs and
good.
just stuff implemented for this kind of thing. Foundations, he said,
Good.
being set up. He said it's going to be big and
Awesome.
much different.
That's great. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. Erik, I love you so much. Jennifer,
Thank
this is
you.
great. You guys go check her out at psychiccomedianjenniferdoran.com. I will probably put this in, since it's so currently relevant, the next in queue. So let's talk about the event that's coming on October 19th, 20th, and 21st. All you have to do is click on the button that is on the homepage of channelingerik.com, and it's on the right-hand sidebar, and you will see it. Click on it, register for it, and anything else you want to say about it, Jennifer?
It's just going to be a great event. Definitely, if you can make it, come. It'll be a lot of fun.
And it's going to be at my house, and we're going to, since my husband and I need to get rid of some of Erik's stuff slowly but surely, we're going to give some of it away, not out of idolatry, but because if you have some of the stuff, sometimes it can help you connect to him better. So,
yeah.
All right.
Real quick, that's called psychometry.
Psychometry, that's
so
right.
So if you hold an object that has energy from somebody on it, it's easier to sometimes pick up the energy, and so that's actually a real, true thing.
All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
Erik.
Bye.